Welcome to Discover Indie Film. I'm your host, Jeff Howard, and this is going to be a fun one, particularly for me, but hopefully for everyone who listens to it. I've got Hayden Croft with me. Hey, Hayden.
Hi, Jeff.
We are on Zoom, so the quick Zoom disclaimer is we don't control the audio quality. Lord knows Zoom compresses it, but hopefully it sounds pretty good. And there's a micro delay in Zoom that we don't perceive, so if it ever sounds like I'm interrupting Hayden or he's interrupting me, I swear to God, we're probably not. That's just a little micro delay in the recording. So that's the Zoom disclaimer. Now I'm going to talk about Hayden because this is your fourth appearance on this podcast. Am I right? Fourth? Yes, fourth.
Quattro.
Number 4. But let's go way back, 2018. Hayden and your producing partner and lead actor, Jay Eftimoski, came over to talk about New Age Olde English, which I love that movie. And I believe that was in our first ever film invasion, I think. Might have been the second year, but I think it was first year.
Early stages, yeah.
Very early, yeah, when we were just a cute little local film festival. It was Sherman Oaks Film Festival 2016, which means that was the first Sherman Oaks Film Festival ever, the inaugural year. And next year we have the 10th anniversary.
That's awesome, dude. Congratulations, man. That's a really huge achievement. And let me just say, I think I don't even think, this is definitely true. You were the first festival to ever accept me at anywhere. I remember it was Sherman with New Age Olde English. I had actually gotten a couple of rejections first, and I was like, oh no, like this isn't, like I thought this was kind of clever. I thought this was cool. And like, no. And then you with the acceptance, and then you like kind of after that, it was like, yep. And then.
Right. So other festivals joined in after you screened with us. I always find that interesting that some festivals want the seal of approval from someone else, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know.
Because I've heard that before. I've heard it from other people.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree that that's how it is. I'm not necessarily saying it's like a causal thing. It just maybe, I mean, it very well, I'm sure is. And then, obviously festivals like to see if you played at big places, that means something. But like, even just karmically and just like good energy, to get that first affirmation, and then you're just in a more sort of positive headspace, and you can kind of bear that next rejection if you're like, well, one person saw the value of it, and
I thank you for saying that, because I had never thought of the fact that it will help, like the fact that we just care about quality and not a lot of other factors, which are probably very smart for festivals to take into consideration. I always joke that this quality first attitude that Sherman Oaks Film Festival and Film Invasion LA take, it's not good business. A lot of times we might screen, this last Film Invasion last month, we held Film Invasion LA out there in that beautiful theater. And there were a couple screenings that were really unattended, like not many people. But I was Mr. Idealist. I was like, this is the best film that was submitted. One of the best films submitted. We're showing it. We're not just because the filmmaker doesn't live in LA and can't be here and rally people doesn't mean we don't want to show the best films possible. But back to this story of you on this podcast. So you appeared number 47, number 148, actually. A couple years later, actually 3 years later, you came back July 2021 to talk about Last Wish. That was actually at Film Invasion LA in 2018. So 2 years later, you came back with that film. A couple years after that, you came back on the podcast to talk about Last Wish. And Last Wish was just you and I. And then later that year, you came on to talk about For Junkies, which another kick-ass short film. So now we've used this podcast to talk about New Age Olde English, then Last Wish, and then For Junkies we talked about in September 2021, because that one was at Sherman Oaks Film Festival in 2019. So you had a film in one of the festivals in 2016, 2018, 2019, and now you're here, number 4, for a couple. Oh wait, and I left off the literature. I gotta mention literature. because something crazy happened when you came in here in 2018 and sat at this very table I'm sitting at now, which is you handed me a book. You handed me a book that you had written, a collection of short stories, Kisses from Strangers in the Dark. And you know, full disclosure, you were, should I ask how old you were in 2018? Let's say 30 years younger than me-ish.
I was about
20.
30. Yeah, 30.
Yeah, so around 20. So there's a young person 20 years younger than me hands me a book of short stories. You know, that can go either way, right? That can go either way. Like, here, I wrote this. But you know what? I sat down and I read it. I think I loved them all. I had favorites, but I was like, damn, this dude can write. This is really good shit. I really enjoyed your book of short stories, Kisses from Strangers in the Dark. The people they can still go buy it on Amazon.
Yeah.
You get like $1.20 when someone buys it. Hopefully.
I'm not actually, you know what? You can find it on Amazon. Like, by all means, try. But I've got a box of those books right over here, like 50 of them.
So someone who loves, okay, my disclaimer is, if you're a fan of David Sedaris, which means if you appreciate smart, humorous writing, then you should find Hayden on social media. There'll be a link in the show notes if you want it to your social media, and people can send you a message and go, dude, I'll read your book.
I mean, that's like seriously the only approach, you know, unless you happen to have an uncle who like runs Viking Press or something. It's not going to happen. Or like, you know, your dad was like college.
Yeah. You've got you self-publish this collection of short stories, and they are worth reading.
Yeah, well, I think so. Yeah,
that's my objective opinion. And then I guess. And now you're on here for two reasons, which is last year in 2023, your film Tax Time showed at Film Invasion LA. And I'm a huge fan of Tax Time. Tax Time is just smart, funny.
I love Tax Time. I do just want to point out author screenwriting credit of Tax Time. I was not the director on Tax Time as I was with the previous three films. But yeah, I wrote the screenplay, collaborated with a dear new friend of mine, Raphael Bassan, who directed it. Guy's magic. It's turned out so weird and crazy and quirky, but it's great. Like,
just good. And but I guess it had to be before that, right? Yeah, because it was on my holiday cruise. Mm-hmm. You sent me a Word doc of a novel, an actual novel, like over 100 pages, right? Like 350 page novel, we can curse on here, a real motherfucking novel. And so I took it with me on my holiday and I read it. And once again, I was just like, Hayden can write it was one, I enjoyed the heck out of that novel. I loved reading it. I love so much about it that, you know, so I'm your fanboy in my own way.
I mean, I don't doubt it, man. Never doubt it. Or, you know, because like I got to tell you, when you read that book and sent me back your response on the email, I was like coming back from dental work in Mexico. I was with my mom, and I don't know. I don't think it was like a low moment or anything. It was just kind of like boring. But like I was like, oh, I got this message from Jeff, and then I like read it. And well, of course, I like scanned through it before I read it to my mom. But I was like, okay, it's really positive. So then I read it, and I was like, man, that just made the day. You know, it was like, again, somebody appreciates what you're doing. And
I believe I gave you, because you had asked me to, because it was an earlier draft. You asked for some feedback, and I think I gave some constructive criticism. I think I gave. It wasn't like I said, oh my God, this is perfect. But I was like, this is fucking great. Here's the little things that didn't work for me, but I am a huge believer in authorship, and that when people ask me for feedback, I'm like, hey, you do not have to respect my feedback at all. Feel free to say, you're completely wrong. I disagree. But I just have to be honest with people when I see something.
Well, that makes it more genuine, you know. I'd rather not have you just be like a yes man and like, you know what I mean? Like, I know that you're like that too, which is why the feedback on the novel was all the more important. No, but Jeff, for the record, I mean, if we're ever going to be like talking about this in the future, which like, you know, knock on wood, hey, but like, there's a really key suggestion Jeff made about something I should do for the book involving a screenplay, like a physical. Well, not physical, but, you know,
like a screenplay within the novel. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was a great suggestion. And I'd made the change, and it was like, now it's one of my favorite things. It's a thing that like almost everybody that reads it comments on and says like, oh, I love this thing, you know, like this little device or whatever.
Nice. So I should have been an editor. I should have been a book editor. I should be working at Viking Press. That's a bummer. I missed my calling. Who knew?
You really should, man. I feel like it's not the same. Like, you know, of course I'm a huge Stephen King guy, and I'm like, I'll read On Writing by him or whatever. You know, coming up in the 70s, it was just like a different time to be a novelist, you know. And I mean, I'm not like low.
No, you're
came up
saying,
in that time.
There's no one can question what you're saying. I mean, the moderately brainless comment I have is that people used to talk about writing the great American novel, right? That used to be a goal of artistic people. No one talks that way anymore. No one. People want to write, you know, they talk screenplays, they talk this, they talk that. Like, I meet so few people. I'm sure there are, not to say there's no novelists left, but it's not part of the culture to embrace the novel as a, you know what, as part of pop culture. Like, what, I can't even name the last time everyone talked about a book.
Right. I mean,
I'd have to go back to the Grisham crap or whatever.
Or like Da Vinci Code, maybe. Or
Da Vinci Code was newer. Yeah.
Or like, you know, well, like the Harry Potters, of course, like then getting into the later, or Twilights or Hunger Games. I mean, there are some, and I mean, those
again,
are all
it's almost always youth fiction, right? It's always young adult or youth.
Yeah. And I mean, all those ones I even just mentioned are even now like 10, 15 years ago. You know, I mean, that's not like recent stuff.
I know, isn't it crazy that like the kids who grew up on Harry Potter are now parents?
Yeah, it blows my mind.
It blows my mind too. But so that's why we're. And by the way, when I read the book, it was called Oh No NoHo, which was a great title, but specific to Los Angeles. If you don't know the neighborhood NoHo, the wonderful pun Oh No NoHo.
Mm-hmm.
So you have changed it. Is there a current title you should share? Or?
I don't know, man.
Or right now you're uncommitted?
Like, when I started writing the book, funny story. The one thing I had in my head that I knew for sure, I was like, I got the title. It's No Way NoHo. You know, it's like No Way No How, right? But just leaving off the W. I was gonna work in the phrase No Way No How, or like somebody says no way, and then, you know what I mean, and have it not be like in your face, but like it was going to be an interesting little like another device I was kind of going to do. But then for some reason, I don't know why that title sort of fell out of favor in my mind, or I got a lot of sort of feedback on it. I think maybe including from you. And so it went to No NoHo. Then it went to, there was several others. My mom, who is awesome, and I mean, shout out forever to my mom, came up with the title that's actually currently on the book. Although I honestly, if I'm being honest, it probably won't end up being the title I'm going to go with. But just as a title, the protagonist name is Sandford Ramsey. And so my mom proposes the title Sand Ramsey is a Dick. Because, like, she thinks that of the character, and which is true. I mean, he is. But, you know, so it's just funny to have your mom propose that. And then we had this great poster artist who's the guy that's doing our poster for Jousters. And because you did our poster for Tax Time, but he also, and we got to, let's come back to that. I'm thinking, what else did he do? He did another couple, Boys Club, and just a couple, like a couple other little projects here.
Yeah, by the way, for those listening, that's proof that I'm like, and I say this jokingly, I'm not like halfway up Hayden's ass, because he's naming films that were submitted to the film festivals I run that were not in our festival. Like, Rejected. I'm not sitting around going, right? Like I'm just taking a moment to not just say that, but to say that like Hayden is the kind of awesome person who, when he gets a rejection from someone who has supported him in the past, or, not that a rejection from Sherman Oaks Film Festival or Film Vision LA is personally from me, but because there is a selection jury and I respect the jury's opinions. But yeah, you've made at least 5 films in the time I've known you, 5 or 6, and 6, and we've screened 3 out of 6. So I'm not. I
mean, that's actually not a great record, but I mean, just for how
it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
It is good. I mean, considering how good the festival is and how we're talking about, I mean, it's strictly like a quality basis. And
one of them would have been in, but we swapped in Tax Time because we both, amusingly, that's a favorite story of mine, which is you had a film in the festival and then it was already accepted as an official selection. And we're not naming that one, which is fine. And then you sent me like a rough cut of Tax Time and said, "What do you think of this?" And I was like, "I'm not going to lie, I like it better than the one that we're going to put." So we rushed. So we whipped out a DCP. We got it ready for the big theater in Glendale, and boom, there it was on the screen. Like
4 days later.
A fast turnaround, right?
Yeah, no, that was crazy. And I mean, that just definitely goes to show, like, with what you're saying. Yeah, you're definitely not just taking everything. And I think it speaks to and I'm just trying to find various titles here that I could show you then. But I think it speaks to the quality of your festival that I think you've been able to get a bit like pickier, like over.
I mean, honestly, we got no choice but to be picky. I mean, in the beginning, we barely got like 100 submissions. And, 10 years later, we're getting 900. So,
yeah. No, I mean, you
clearly
keep up with quality.
Yeah. I mean, it just gets harder to show everything you like. Honestly, the first couple years, we showed stuff, and I was like, "Man, why is this on the screen?"
Yeah,
not your stuff.
Hey,
but that was part of me being petty. This podcast was part of me being petty because in the very beginning of the podcast. This is an asshole statement, but I got a little bit of asshole in me. Like, this podcast was so that I could invite the people whose films were really good. Right?
That's for me, by the way.
Yeah.
Reminding myself.
But you know what I mean? Like I do all these Q&As at the film festival. I do like 20 or whatever in a weekend. And then I'd be like, 11 of those people deserve to talk for an hour, but the other 9, I'm not sure. You know what I mean? Like I used to be selective about who I invited on the podcast but then the quality, as the number of submissions grew for both festivals, all of a sudden we had no choice but to get pickier. And all of a sudden, I don't know, somewhere around probably 2019, 2020, I was like, wow, I just have to invite everyone on because we don't show every film is like a 9+, like on a scale of 1 to 10, everything's a 9+ now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's a bummer because what we were just saying about novels, like you don't see many new like voices in novels because people have to invest so much money into backing somebody's novel. But once you've done a film, it's a completed work. And so, the proliferation of quality films as everybody wants to get into this industry, more and more people pour into it, and there's talented people, smart people coming up all the time. And I mean, you just gotta they're 20 and they're in their 20s now. I mean, it's a new world,
Yeah, I gotta admit, part of me, I can't do it. It can't happen. But Like, oh wait,
Well,
did you didn't make it out to Film Invasion last June, in June last month, but a filmmaker came to me about the virtual reality sort of 360-degree filmmaking that you watch on one of those visors. Mm-hmm. Whether it's they're only owned by megacorps, right? So it's either Facebook, Meta's, Oculus, or Apple's thing at this point. I guess there might be others, but so he hit me up with that, and I'm like, dude, we're spending so much money on this theater, like, forget it. Mm-hmm. And then he was a little persistent, and he had me come over to his studio and watch film on the VR visor. And he worked out with sponsorship and stuff. So we were able to have like a free little VR pavilion in the lobby of the theater where if people were waiting for the next screening to start, they just come out of a screening, they could sit down and watch like what these creative people are doing with this format. So we added that little pavilion, and I got, man, you make me wish we could have like a fiction pavilion. Like we have screenplay awards, right, for unproduced screenplays as part of the festivals. But man, I wish we could embrace like unpublished novels. Like I wish we could have I could find 10 people willing to read a ton of novels and just like let people submit novels. But the truth is, I don't even know how to get out to the community of people who've written unpublished novels that are worth a view, you know?
Right. Well, it's like, here's the thing is everybody says to me, or if they haven't said it already, they will after hearing this. Like, well, Hayden, you're a writer. Write a screenplay of the book, you know? And this is something I've talked with Raphael, the director, about. And we go back and forth. And I've kind of misgauged maybe interest from various parties on certain ways to approach the story. You know, because I think I told Jeff I was listening to some of our previous interviews, and one of the things we talked about was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the book, the novelization by Quentin Tarantino. Did you ever read that? Okay, well,
no, sorry, I'm shaking my head on a podcast.
I didn't even think about it. Yeah, I was just saying how great it was, and it is. It's amazing. I've listened to it about 8 more times since we last talked. But it does, like, Tarantino does this really awesome thing where most novelizations, if they happen at all of a film, are just the written version of what you saw in the film.
Yeah, they just pay someone a little bit of money to spit it out in prose.
Yeah, and Tarantino realizes, he's like, look, here's this whole other medium. What if I do this thing where I actually kind of tell the story that the movie didn't tell? You know what I mean? Where you kind of like circles around these various characters. So my idea, like, that I was going to had for the book, which you've read, is to never include Sand himself like once, but to just be with the cops around the corner, to be with Greg as Nemesis, to be with the Max and Mari, the 2 M's in the tent. To be with, and just it follows every other set of characters that we see throughout the course of the story, what they're doing that night, and we keep just missing Sand getting there, or he's just left, And
right. So you would make a companion piece, not an adaptation.
Well, see, and I mean that's the question, because it's like, is that the way to go, or is that the way to go when you're Quentin Tarantino? But like when you're first trying to get your book out there, maybe just the better thing to do is like a straightforward adaptation. You know what I mean? Like, which is more of a convention.
You should do whatever your heart wants, because in the harsh reality of the world we live in, it's not like if you adapt the screenplay, it's not like it's guaranteed to get made either. No. So it's probably even harder. So it's not like a screenplay adaptation of your novel will make everyone go, oh man, this is so great, let me read the novel. Like, I'm not sure. So you should do whatever your heart dictates.
Well, honestly, I think like that the way that this is, it sort of has to happen. And I mean, I don't know if anybody like in the saga that is Hayden and Jeff talking on this podcast, if anybody ever looks back on this or listens to it, like what I was doing at various stages. I'm sure I'm going to write a screenplay version of the book, and maybe it will, maybe it won't be made. Who knows? But that might not be the thing that you see of mine, like in the future. But then, but my point, I guess, being that I think I do need to like write a successful film in order for people to then be like, well, what else has he done? Oh, he has a book. Cool. We'll read that book. Yeah.
And then listen to this shit, because I often joke with people, I like my emotional understanding of this podcast. I mean, I don't tell people, come on my podcast, I'll make you famous. What I really say is, come on my podcast while you're on the festival circuit and talk about your film, your indie film. Mm-hmm. And then, God willing, deities of the world, creator of the universe, whatever you want to call it, the person who coded the simulation, knock on wood, they when you end up getting an Oscar or some shit like that, if someone reaches that pinnacle and they did this podcast 10, 15 years earlier, like I always say, like, how cool would it be to listen to an interview with, Spielberg when Amblin was on the festival circuit, like when he had a short on the festival circuit. Like it's kind of the purpose of the podcast, is to create little time capsules for people. And in your case, because you keep making film, you're plugging away. Like you've been basically like every 3 years you come back. So we kind of have a nice time capsule in that we have a 2018, a 2021, and now a 2024. So it actually unintentionally every 3 years. So I guess you'll be on here in 2027. Now the die has been cast. You got to come on every 3 years. And I'm never allowed to retire this podcast.
Yeah. I was just trying to slide the Latin in there because I always got to do that because I'm an asshole.
There's nothing asshole about Latin.
Yeah. That's just because it's a thing Stephen King does quite. Well, it's not like it's an ongoing thing, but he's used the alia iacta est, which means the die is cast in Latin. In several of his books, and then I have that in my book as well. I'm not just cribbing and King on everything, but that's one thing that I did.
For sure. All right, so I feel like this has all been intro in a way. Mm-hmm. So what should we jump into next? Like, do you want to talk about Tax Time? Do you want to like Tax Time also went on? You were killing it in last year, right? You had Jousters all over the festival circuit, and then Tax Time pretty much backed it up and was hitting festivals as well, right? Like you were double fisted that year with stuff you wrote and handed to other people to direct.
Yeah. I did. Yeah, last year was a good year, definitely good. The other film wasn't Jousters though. Jousters is this year.
Oh, I said Jousters. I meant Boys Club. All right.
Right. Jeff has not been a big fan of Boys Club since the start, but which is fine. I would rather him have his likes and dislikes than to just be like, I love it every single time. I mean, that loses value. But yeah, so Jousters is going to be the thing that you'll probably hear. I mean, hopefully not the only one, but it's one we already got in the bag for this year. It actually just came out. We're on 3 acceptances already.
Nice.
Yeah. So we'll see what the judge, Sherman Oaks, says about that, I guess. But then in the meantime, we'll be picking up other, hopefully, just to, like for the laurels for the poster, which like Tax Time, let's, I guess, circle back because Jeff made our poster that we ended up using for Tax Time, even though we had this professional poster guy do this other poster, which was a good poster. There's nothing wrong with the other poster, but Jeff did this poster that was like very simple grandfather clock, like upside down writing Tax Time, just black and white and red, which is like my favorite color combination. And it's just powerful, that poster. I think that's my favorite poster, like of anything. It's just it was like
pure luck. I mean, like as I described earlier, we were like Tax Time was being subbed in with like weeks ago before the festival, and I'm a little anal. It always bums me out to not have a poster for a film, and like you were actually, as I didn't mention, right? You said to me, here's a little film we're just going to put on YouTube. Yeah. And when you showed me Tax Time, and I was like, so you weren't making a poster, you were just going to put it on YouTube. And then I was like, whoa, let's put that in the festival. And it was like less than a month to go to the festival, I think. So I was just like, fuck it, I'll just see. And I think I Googled clocks with the, I am always anal about rights. So I think I did a search for images of clocks or images. I might even done an image search for the words Tax Time that were public domain, that free use. And like, there was that stopwatch that said Tax Time on it. And I was like, and it had those 3 colors. And I was like,
interesting.
Yeah, unless I can't remember if I chose the red. I think I pulled the red out of the watch. And then I just discovered if I flipped it up, I just got lucky. I just flipped it upside down, put in the, of course, someone who runs a festival owns the font on his computer that can do the movie poster font that's kind of specialized. Yeah. And just whip it up and said, hey, how about we use this? And you were like, damn, that's good. And I confess, like, sometimes you just get lucky. It was just
it's a good poster. It's a really good, like, no need to be modest. Like I have this other, like a professional poster guy, and he's a really good guy. Like I've worked with him again and again. He did the cover of my book. He did Boys Club. He did, he's doing Jousters as we speak. I'll probably see that any day now. We're just about to have the final poster, which is great. But anyway, professional poster guy, I didn't even know you ever did any graphic stuff or anything like that. And then I'm
just an amateur. But I mean, it's funny. I don't know if I told you this. 3 doors down from where I'm sitting right now, 3 or 4 doors down, is a nice married couple who work from home like me. So I see them walking their dog all the time. And they make posters for the studios for a living.
Nice.
And I once, when they found out I ran Sherman Oaks Film Festival, and we all live in Sherman Oaks. They said, oh, that's so cool. I said, well, if you guys do posters, you want to be like, should we create an award at Sherman Oaks Film Festival called Best Poster, and you two can be the judges of it since you're pros? And they said yes. And then I never followed up with them on that. And I admit, when I made your poster and I loved it so much, I'm like, oh damn, maybe I can get them in. And wouldn't it be hilarious if they chose the one that like amateur ass Jeff made?
Yeah. I would have honestly, I would not have been surprised one bit if that had happened, because there was a festival that did Best Poster that we were at with Boys Club that won Best Poster for that, the one that the other guy did. That's a great poster. I love the Boys Club poster. It's probably a close second to yours. It's insane that I'm even saying this because, it's not, because you're obviously a very smart, talented, creative guy. But it's just I never knew you did graphics or anything.
But I don't. I just got lucky. I honestly like I am I guess I would say I'm a talented amateur.
I would say so.
Right. So I just happened to get lucky with your poster. And if someone paid me to make a poster, it wouldn't work because I don't have the skill set. I don't have the skill set. I could just whip one out, and if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. But
you nailed it.
But if someone paid me to do it, I'd be like actually, there's a film. There's a fucking brilliant film was at Film Vision LA last month, and written and directed by this really talented woman, and I admitted to her after the festival, after she won like 4 or 5 awards, and I was like, by the way, between us, the only thing about your film that isn't perfect is the poster. Like you should really get a better poster. And she like laughed and went, funny, I was wishing I had a better poster too, but like we're about to go to Cannes and I was maybe going to pay someone, but I don't have the free money. And I said to myself, do I have any ideas for this person? Can I make a poster for her? And I had nothing. My brain was empty. But I know the poster thing is really funny because it really represents the film.
Can you say what the title of that?
Oh, yeah. That was Good Girls Get Fed. Anyone who's at a festival who has a chance to watch Good Girls Get Fed should. Because as you can tell by the title, it walks the line between horror and thriller and drama. But
It's a good title. Like, I had no expectation when I asked you for the title, and then you're kind of like, oh, okay. The only reason I asked was because I kind of do this counting thing with titles, and then, it helps to see the poster, like if it's just a one-word title or like some 5 or 6 sometimes, or like, hey, just right off the bat, can you name a major motion picture with a title of 7 words or longer?
What the one?
I got one that's 9. I just came up with 7 in my head right now.
Well, what was the name of the one? Well, besides Buckaroo Banzai across the whatever dimension.
Yeah, like
not the 80s.
Not counting like Doctor Strangelove or How I Learned to Stop.
Yeah, with the subtitle. But what was? Oh my God, the one that was like the comedy version of The Matrix by the guys who did Everything Everywhere All at Once. Everything Everywhere All at Once. That's just 5. That's just 5. That's just 5.
Yeah. All right, you want me to tell you the 9?
Yeah.
You're going to be like, oh, Seeking a Friend for the End of the World. Seeking a Friend for the
I love that film, by the way.
Yeah, it's a good movie. It's a great concept piece. It's awesome. That's kind of like my short story, Arguments and Asteroids, which I think you've commented on numerous times.
That was kind of like my favorite from your shorts that was kind of my favorite from Kisses from Strangers. Not only that, but I think I was like, dude, please adapt this one.
I mean, because it's broad concept, because that's like Seeking a Friend for the End of the World. If you haven't seen it, Steve Carell, Keira Knightley, it's like Armageddon if the mission to outer space failed. It's like, no, the comet's coming, we're all going to die. Right.
And what do you do with the time you've got? Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I mean, it's a doom genre. Yeah, that's
that's a concept, like, I don't think, because I had that story idea before that movie came out even, but it's like nobody can like copyright that concept because it's like,
and you do something so different than what they do.
Yeah, because like I'm sure people left like Deep Impact and all those movies. Like, what if they made a movie where they just failed? Like what would happen on Earth here if that was that?
Yeah, well, that other one, oh my God, it's so funny. I used to be really good with names. Will Ferrell's director, he did that one.
McKay.
Adam McKay.
Don't look up.
Don't look up. Don't look up. Same thing, right? Same thing. We're all going to die. What do we do with our last couple weeks or months?
And hey, Jeff, just real quick, I don't think it's going to happen, but if my computer by chance clicks off here, because I got it plugged in, I don't know why my battery should be depleting, but I'll just call you immediately back on my phone.
Got it.
Right, if it happens.
If you disappear, I will hit pause on this recording and we'll pull you back in.
Okay. But, I don't know if it should happen, but I want to have you be aware.
It's funny. This does not relate to your work specifically, but part of me just, now that you reminded me of that short story that I loved, that involves an asteroid smacking the Earth. Like every once in a while at the festivals, I meet an animator, right, or a VFX digital kind of animator type person. I'm like, damn, I should send them your short story just so I could be like, dude, someone should adapt this because like it's so visual but also so funny and surprising. It would be a cool little animated short.
It would, definitely. I mean, there was like that thing with The Incredibles 2 that came out where they did that short like at the beginning of the film. It was like a completely different story with like the old like Asian woman and the little dumpling. It's like
Pixar does such a good job of that.
Yeah, it was like totally cute and fun. And I mean, we talk a lot about like
that was the Bao one, right? That was the one where the woman, it was like the metaphor of like eating her own child.
Yeah. With the little dumpling. It's like her son is.
It was dumplings, yeah, but that was cool and edgy.
It was cute, yeah. It was very, and I'm saying like I think maybe that's what that's a place for a short film. Maybe at the beginning of these big like Incredibles 2, everybody's going to go see that. What's the best little short somebody's come up with this year?
Yeah. Only if it's from a big. Yeah, it's funny. The first year, actually. Sherman Oaks, I don't know if we fixed it for Sherman Oaks or not. But in 2016, our first year of our 2 festivals, we would do a short and a feature together, and real like old Hollywood style. And it didn't take me long to realize this is fucked up, because the person who made the short is sitting there for an hour and a half to 2 hours waiting for their Q&A.
Right. And everybody's
now I just changed it. Like, it's got to be a block of shorts and a feature alone.
Yeah, because I mean, the problem you're going to face there is everybody's just going to have forgotten about, like, they're going to watch the feature at that point, you know?
Exactly, and it's just unfair to everyone. And the person who made the feature is like, yeah, so we did away with that. But if the same person had a feature and then like a short they'd done a couple years earlier, and they said, "Hey, you want to show my short before my feature?" You know, if we've got the time in the theater, that would be kind of fun.
Definitely, yeah. And I mean, especially with something that's like 10 minutes or less, or like Tax Time was, you know, like less than 6 minutes. I mean, I don't think that's asking too much of the audience, you know?
No, I think your world-ending short story was like, what, 2-3 pages?
Yeah, that was
a quickie.
Real short, yeah.
That one might be a 4-minute film. It's basically like a quick conversation.
Yeah,
it's okay. We're giving away the ending, and then everybody, you know, and then the Earth dies, or no, the Earth lives. That's what
humanity dies.
I am always. It's funny. I love that guy Neil deGrasse Tyson, because whenever someone says "save the Earth," he goes, "The Earth don't care. The Earth is going to live for 4 or 5 more billion years. Will life on Earth survive or not? That's the thing. We're not trying to save the Earth. We're trying to save our own lives."
Right.
When we talk about ecology and the planet, like, we're not trying to save the planet. The planet doesn't care that there's ants on it.
Yeah. No, I mean, unless you start getting up to talking about, like, you know, well, I was even going to say like terraforming and shit, but I mean, if that's Neil deGrasse Tyson, probably knows a little better than I do about like what's possible in the future. But yeah, I mean, I don't. We always think of Earth as far as just like us on Earth. You know, and I mean, that's
exactly. But it's just save the Earth isn't about the Earth. It's the people on it.
Yeah.
And needless to say, you know, when they try to make fun of dirty hippies like me who love our solar panels and shit, I'm like, dude, I'm not doing it for the Earth. I'm doing it. I'm being selfish, like you. You're trying to be selfish. Like, I just want to hang out longer. I want this little experiment that is humanity to, like, you know, maybe last a little longer, because I think we're kind of cool. We make movies. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, that speaks in our favor.
We write books.
But it's like, yeah, but if you think about, and I mean, you know, if you think about humanity and then like how relatively just not relatively at all, a tiny fraction of just a blip on the mark of like time, you know, and like what it would mean. Can you imagine like humanity if we even make it 1,000 more years? Like 1,000 sounds like, if not here on Earth, I feel like we'll kill each other or something. It's going to need to be like on other planets by 1,000 years from now. But 1,000 years is nothing.
Nothing. You know what I learned the other day from Neil deGrasse Tyson was that the dinosaurs ruled the Earth for so long. They were the main life form on Earth. They didn't really rule it, not like they had a fucking government, but the distance in time that elapsed between when Stegosaurus was alive and T-Rex, between those 2 dinosaurs, they lived more millions of years apart than T-Rex and us. We are closer in time to T-Rex than T-Rex was to Stegosaurus. So, like,
that's mind-blowing.
You know, we mammals have been the dominant species on this planet, like you said. Like if this film were a Marvel movie, we're not the scene that comes after the credits. We're the little thing that pops up for half a second that goes copyright 2024. Like that's, like we are. I mean, I guess we're both sort of virtue signaling or touting the fact that we don't hold our species as like the most important thing that ever existed. Like we're acknowledging how cool we are, but we're not. We in no way have guaranteed ourselves permanence or permanent importance. In fact, you know, whatever. If some other intelligence has been watching Earth for the last billion or years or so, they might go, well, things aren't going so well right now on that little rock.
Well, yeah, no, for sure. It's like, I guess the only thing I would say to that about just like humanity and existence is like the whole sort of pure mind and just like what is existence except for consciousness by beings that can perceive it, you know? Because if like the dinosaurs were here millions and millions and millions of years, none of them wrote any fucking novels, you know what I mean, or made any movies.
Yeah, their communication was immediate. Yeah, not recorded.
Yeah, it was base when compared with ours, I would say. the dinosaur.
Dude, we could get into a killer discussion now about the ability to record, as in write things down. Like that changed everything. When we went from hunter gatherer, where we might do a couple cave paintings to like note our day, when we came up with language and then written language, changed everything. When we wrote, religions used to be pretty pastoral and chill. And then when we wrote it down and said, this book is like the law, all of a sudden, like you can't have law without, you know what I mean? Fascinating.
Right.
Yeah, our ability.
Hey, Jeff, let's do
we got to switch. Here, let me pause.
Yeah, my computer is.
And we're back. All right, so Hayden had to pause because the laptop battery was dying. So you will notice his audio quality changes.
I have to say, I do not think it changed for the better if I heard it just a second ago. Do you think?
I think, when you go from laptop to phone, interestingly, the microphone gets worse and the camera gets better. And people can't see you, but I can. So now you're in better resolution for me, but right. You sound a little more like you're in a small room, but no big deal.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you can hear me, you can hear me.
One of the funny things about podcasts during the pandemic was all of a sudden everything switched to Zoom and audio quality we all realized we just like, I see podcasts as the campfire and the conversation of our culture in a way. Like we don't get enough conversation in our lives, and that's why it's so fun to listen to people's conversations on podcasts. Yeah. And Hayden's image is frozen for me right now, so I'm going to keep talking.
I think you and I are. I'm sorry, what?
You're freezing now.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think I'm what now?
Your image is freezing. I think. Does your phone have the Wi-Fi working?
Jeff, are you not hearing me? You and I are unique in that respect, I think, because we value like dialogue, I think, more than most people, or communication in film, because there's a lot of films that don't feature dialogue so heavily, like The Revenant, great film, not tons of dialogue. And that's like an exception for me, The Revenant, but like I tend to not like films so much where there's not people talking.
Yeah, I can go both ways. Like, I mean, my favorite example is what is wrong with me? There Will Be Blood. Like,
oh yeah,
the first whatever it is, 20 to 25 minutes that so much story is told without. I love it when it's without dialogue, but I love discussion, and I love, like, you know, as I have been a part of our two film festivals. We spend more time sometimes discussing the films than we actually spend watching the films, because to me a festival is about community gathering together to watch and discuss a film. And when I meet a festival programmer who from another festival and they're like, "Oh, you do those Q&As?" I've actually heard a guy. Have you heard me tell the story? Like a guy who ran another local film festival was like, that's bigger than ours. He was like, "Oh yeah, filmmakers like that crap. I don't give a shit. I don't care what they want. I want to show 90 minutes of shorts, give them 5 minutes to talk, and kick them out and show the next 90. Like I don't give a shit about. I don't care what they want." And I'm like, damn, if people are going to watch films and not discuss them together, they might as well watch them at home.
Yeah. Yeah. Good call. Good point.
Yeah, I am all about the discussion. And of course, it extends and that's why I started a podcast, because I was like, we talk for 10, 15 minutes about a film afterwards, after its screening. And I'm like, God, there's so much more to talk about with a lot of them.
There usually is, yeah. And I mean, I do very much appreciate when like a director or a screenwriter or anybody can tell a story without speaking. I mean, that's definitely a talent too, like big time. But like Quentin Tarantino, like Jeff and I were talking about last time, we had talked about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, both the book and the movie. And Tarantino talks, or actually, I don't think this was from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think this was just this was from Cinema Speculation. It was his other book where he just talks about movies. And he was saying how when he did Reservoir Dogs, like this favorite director of his, I'm sure you'd probably know who it was, but I didn't know right off the bat. Maybe Brian De Palma. I know who that is, but like, anyway, whoever it was at Sundance, I think, for Reservoir Dogs. And Tarantino found himself talking to the guy's wife. And he knew a fact about the guy was that the guy did not like dialogue that much. And so he's like, oh man, your husband's going to hate my movie. And she's like, why do you think that? And he's like, because it's just people talking. And then like the husband came over and like heard what they were saying. He's like, yeah, that's very true. I don't like movies that are just talking. But then I forget what Tarantino's like verdict on that was, whether the guy ended up liking it or not. I guess it was kind of inconsequential to the ultimate result of the film. But, it was just it made a point of Tarantino basically like acknowledging what I mainly do is write dialogue. I mean, obviously his stories are amazing. He writes everything, but I think Tarantino's signature in a lot of ways is dialogue.
Well, especially in that first one, but also, let's be real. He wrote Reservoir Dogs with the intention of making it for $5 with his friends doing all the acting roles, right? And it was Lawrence Bender, who was going to be one of those actors, who was his friend, who said, wait a minute, let me try to raise money for this. This is a good script. But obviously, if you're writing a diamond heist film and you have no budget, it makes more sense to have just all the conversations the team has around the heist, because you can't afford the set piece, the Dog Day Afternoon set piece. That's millions of dollars. So really it was out of necessity. And then each film, Tarantino's gotten his signature dialogue. And you and I both like his work. I know whatever, some people don't, but he's really grown a lot. I mean, his what he does today is so different than what he did 20 years ago. God, I can't believe. Actually, Reservoir Dogs was more like 25 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah, about 20 or no, you know what? 30 years ago.
Oh my God, you're right.
30. I was about to be like, no, 20, but then I was like, no,
32
30.
years ago. Holy shit, I was just 24.
Yeah, that's we were talking about. You mentioned on one of those last episodes that your friend from college called you and said, like, oh, you got to go check out this new.
You know what? I should just
Reservoir
name check
Dogs.
him. John Gillis, one of my college roommates and dearest friends, has amazing taste in film. He's probably indirectly responsible for my passions because, we were roommates for years in college, and what did we do? We didn't study. We just watched movies over and over, and so he's the one who told me, you got to watch this. Just go see. Reservoir Dogs was still in the theaters in like a limited run. It was like, he's in San Francisco, I'm in LA. So those towns had Reservoir Dogs when it was on like 12 screens in the country. Like it was a really small release and it just caught fire,
Yeah, big time. That was just like a game changer, like we were saying, just as far as what can be acceptable for like a movie with major cast. Because, I don't think Tarantino was ever expecting to get like Harvey Keitel or
Steve Buscemi or some
Michael
of the other guys.
Madsen.
Right.
Although a lot of those guys, that's also when he started his thing of Tim Roth. Started his thing of sort of bringing back people who'd gone out of fashion, right? Like Madsen, it kind of slipped a little out of fashion. But yeah. And of course, it's where he started his whole thing of doing a little cameo that kicks ass. I got to admit, I enjoy his cameos.
Yeah, I enjoy his cameos too. I had seen Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs like before I was old enough, I think, to really appreciate that. Like, oh, that guy is the guy that wrote and directed it, like. And so I didn't even really know. I was just like, oh, this one guy keeps appearing in all these Tarantino movies. Who's that guy? And then at a certain point, I was like, oh, that's Tarantino.
Just the other day, I was on a long drive and my phone's on shuffle, right? And the Reservoir Dogs soundtrack is on my phone. So one of the bits of dialogue from Reservoir Dogs where Tarantino's, is he Mr. Pink? No, that was Buscemi.
Mr. Brown.
Mr. Brown sounds like Mr. Shit. Yeah. But one of his horrible quotes comes up, like, and plays it like, where he's actually, when he's talking with his interpretation of the song Like a Virgin, like played in my car, like just over the weekend. And I was like, oh man, I haven't seen this movie for a long time. But I got to admit, when you're a parent or an uncle, when the kids hit the right age that you can start showing them Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction and Fight Club, you always wait. You watch Moana and all these other films with the kids, and you just like if you're a cinemaphile, you rub your hands together. I can't wait till this kid is ready. Somewhere around 14, 15, 16, you start going, okay, we can watch this, we can watch that. Like, I love showing my nephews Fight Club.
I have a funny little anecdote about that. Like, I was at a good friend of mine's house whose dad then was younger than I am now. And I was at the house and he was going to put on Pulp Fiction. But I think I was like 13, so I was a pretty like mature 13, I guess, or just as like verbally, whatever. But he still like called my mom and was like, is it cool that we play, that your son watches Pulp Fiction at my house? And she was like, yeah, okay. Yeah, sure. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, okay. But he did the right thing. And like, because that would be a weird thing to get like caught up in with like another parent, or something like that.
Yeah, well, there's heroin use and anal rape. So yeah, that's a bit much.
And just consistent swearing, I mean, some parents have a problem just with that, just the F.
Oh yeah,
F-bomb,
yeah. I guess I'm so out of touch with that. Yeah. There's people who don't like swearing. Yeah, go figure. I always forget that.
Yeah, no, it's like Pulp Fiction was like deliberately trying to be like as adult as possible, like just at every like class, except for nudity and sex. Pulp Fiction had like really everything.
Yeah,
but
for sure. By the way, I probably said this in one of our, because I am jealous that you listened to our previous podcasts, but I do have to flex that. Yeah, besides seeing Reservoir Dogs when it was out in theaters for its first run, I actually saw Pulp Fiction when it came out in '94, and I went to see it alone on my birthday.
I would actually know.
I know what day I saw. I saw Pulp Fiction on October 17th, 1994. Because it was my birthday, and I'm like, oh shit, the guy who made Reservoir Dogs came out with another movie. I'm going to go see it in the theater on my birthday alone. Because I couldn't find anyone to see it with me in the middle of the day, and I took the day off or whatever. So that's another flex.
I was like, you're like, I wonder if this movie will be any good. I wonder if this Pulp Fiction business, what's this? I
mean, obviously, I didn't even know. Yeah. Well, I didn't. Yeah, there were some surprises in that beauty.
I'll probably remember that's how I'm going to remember your birthday now, is in the context of that October. But it's because it sounds like sort of a sad thing when you phrased it as you did, like, oh, I saw it alone on my birthday.
Nah,
but if you're thinking back,
that's sad to me. Yeah.
Pulp Fiction by Tarantino, like that's big, that's a cinematic milestone.
And so, and to me, it's like a treat. Like, I don't, obviously, I can't name the last time I went to the theater alone because oh shit. It might have been Django Unchained. I was like in Vegas for like a convention and Django was out and I'm not into gambling and a lot of the other stuff going on in Vegas. So we just went to see Django alone in Vegas. So I guess I have a little Tarantino thing going on more so than a lot of people.
Where you just go to see his movies alone in the theater. Did you see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and
I went with a friend to that one.
what am I forgetting something between Django and Once Upon a Time?
Yeah, the Kick-Ass one with Jennifer Jason Leigh.
Hateful Eight.
The Hateful Eight.
Yeah, I
liked Hateful Eight.
Yeah, it's a good movie. I like it. I actually saw it again recently and like upped my appreciation of it. But for Tarantino, I mean, just compared to everything else, I'd rank it like lower among his work. Still great, but
hey, to each their own, you know.
Well, I mean, where would you rank it in his work? Like after?
I don't know. I wouldn't. It wouldn't be. I wouldn't tell anyone you got to watch it.
Okay, you'd be too smart to say.
I would. It. My unofficial ranking would be that everyone should see Inglourious Bastards, Pulp Fiction.
We agree on that.
To me, those are the three, the golden trio of his work.
I know you. I just think
Inglourious is where that's his pinnacle.
You and I really agree on that because that was another thing that we talked about at the last one was I was like I think we agree on Inglourious Bastards and you're like yeah like that's awesome film, you know, it's just like on another level.
Yeah, for me it was the first time he went from just being like super cool and edgy with great to like story took over. Like it was like I don't know. I just think it's a special movie, but
it is
special to me. Special to me, you know.
Yeah. I mean, if I'd like, you know, like I was gonna say, I don't know. I was gonna make a point just now about like if we all, like you were saying about the Q&A, like if we all can't agree on what's a good film, if we all don't have some universal ones. But like that's what's good about film or like books and fiction is that we all have our takes. But then there are the Forrest Gumps and the Titanics and the Pulp Fictions. Frankly, have you ever met anybody that you think says they don't like the movie and you think they're not just being a jerk?
Well, I know people who just don't go for it. It's just not their cup of tea, but they have good taste otherwise. But in general, I think I can't name anyone who hates it. I can name people who are like, I'm over him. And I'm like, you know what? I get it. You know, so, you know, I certainly understand, you know, loving the early work and finding him to remain less interesting. Like you said, Hateful Eight, you know, you could take it or leave it. It's a good watch, but it's not, you know, not everything is essential.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, just in context, though, like if I had never seen a Tarantino film and then I saw Hateful Eight, I would be like, this would be like a game changer. But it's just like since we know Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown, Kill Bill, Inglourious Bastards, Django, Hateful Eight, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, that's kind of like just out of those to me. And I know in fairness, I do know quite a few other people that feel this way, but like Hateful Eight, I'm not saying it's bad and in fact, I'm very much the opposite. It's great. Just shows you how good he is though.
Agreed. And, for sure.
Hey Jeff, can I do my poem? Short poem. Should be like a minute.
There's no rules here. The only rule is enforced by you, which is that in about 22 minutes, you got to run.
Right.
24. Sorry, my math was off.
And I've memorized this. So I'm not even just going to be reading it. This is a short, alliterative piece. I call it combustible criteria. Ready?
Okay. Contending with the coarseness current culture calls connection confers a change of course on one's conventional conceptions. Collective condescension can oft commend the callous and the cover-up contenders who conceal their constant malice. Continual condemnation on the subject that is class is both crude and rude and cynical and caters to the crass. They concoct a coalition of compelling conversations to consort with the contentious and contort all condemnations. Coercion is a construct used to codify contrivance. By condoning corporate conduct, one corroborates connivance. To conscript a crowd to conquest, your charm must be courageous, your commands be uncontested, your charisma be contagious. To capture the chaotic, then condemn it to confinement. Okay, this is still me memorizing the poem. This is the last line. To capture the chaotic, then condemn it to confinement. The contestants must be concrete, any comforts on consignment. The conditions of convection are conveyed through circulation, and constricting coalescence can't constrain the conflagration. Contained within this charter is the credible collusion of coherency contagions meant to counteract confusion. That's it.
That's obviously a reading it just flows by, but the language.
Well,
there's the gift of languages in that poem.
I thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that. As you'll see here, this is not the poem. This is just the first word from every line, because I have memorized.
So that's your cheat sheet.
Sort of. It's easier. Like, I have them memorized. It's just the order they come in is the more difficult thing for me for some weird reason. So I just put the first word on every line. I don't know why that should be the case, but it is.
Man, I wish you'd been at, I wish I could handcuff you to a seat in the theater when we hold a festival, because in June at Film Invasion, we showed a film called Pang, P-A-N-G, and it was a poem, and then this a woman who's sort of a performance artist and poet, she read her poem as voiceover, and then this really talented filmmaker, he's like, I read this poem and I had all these images in my head, and he actually used all these images that he'd been sort of carrying around for 15, 20 years, and he put them all into just these black and white visuals with a little bit of red, black, white, and red.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a fantastic art house film that brought poetry and film together, which, we don't get enough of that, right?
Yeah. I mean, like, whatever happened, I was going to say the music video. I know that's not really what you're talking about, but that's sort of another thing that, like, the craft of which
as a kid of the 80s. Yeah. As a kid of the 80s, it breaks. Like, we have a music video category at our festivals, and sometimes we get these great videos, and then sometimes we get shit where it's just like a band records himself on stage, and I'm like, man, is the art of music video, has it gotten killed by, I don't know, but I love music video.
It's like video killed the radio star, TV killed the video star, internet killed the TV star. You know what I mean? It's just like, now we're in VR, and then the next form of entertainment, and then it's going to be like it's going to be like the Oasis from that movie Ready Player One. Did you see that? Where everybody just kind of like jacks into the internet, and it's just like you're actually physically there, and you can just, like pick stuff that's like you'd normally be clicking on. I mean, that has to be like where we're going, and that's just like short term. That's like 50, 70 years in the future, Actually,
Ready Player One is a book that I can't remember who recommended it, but someone recommended it. I read it. I loved it. When the film came out, I thought it was pretty good. I like the book a little more, but I do appreciate how different the movie is. But I do enjoy pissing people off by saying, you know what Spielberg's best film is? And they're like, what? Jaws? I go, Ready Player One. It's his best film. It's the best thing Spielberg's done.
How do you? I don't know. What's the?
That's just my. I think the rest of his films are all kind of flawed. I think Ready Player One just kind of kicks ass. I think he kicked ass. Although probably Munich would be my number one Spielberg, by the way.
It's a good. I'm not down by any means. I mean, I'm not. I don't. I'm definitely going to go on the record of saying I disagree with your opinion as to his best film. But we agree. But Ready Player One's great. Ernest Cline is the writer of the book. We were talking earlier, Jeff and I, about books and like, where's the new novelists, you know? Ernest Cline is one example of a guy that kind of came out of nowhere and had a book that was a big hit. Or also Andy Weir with The Martian, and then with the Matt Damon movie, and then he's done a more recent book called Project Hail Mary, which I've read, which is also very good. They're also adapting that now, so that'll be good. And but he was like a NASA scientist or something, and he was like very like advanced in his field of like studying other planets, like stuff like that. And he just happened to also be really good at writing fiction. Ernest Cline was like an 80s collector or something. Like, basically they were both guys that had already like been successful in other areas, like intelligent areas. And then it kind of just like, oh, hey, they're also one of the people that can write a good book. But yeah, I just, you know,
I never knew about his history. I just knew him as I didn't realize he had that history as before he went to his creative side. But that's cool.
Yeah, well, now that you say it, though, I mean, who's famous for just being a collector? The only reason I know this is because, like, I remember around the time that they were making that film, they did an interview with him, and he has this whole like garage, like studio space. It's just like 80s memorabilia, posters. He has like a DeLorean, Back to the Future. He's got all just decked out. So clearly he did like very well in some area.
I mean, he's a lot like the he's
Halliday.
We can see him, in Halliday, in Ready Player One, which I guess Ernest Cline and I are. Well, he's actually born the year my wife was born, 72. So wow, that was uncool of me. Giving away a woman's age, but I think she don't care.
You know, let's come back to that. I have an interesting point on that in just 1 second, but go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that when people recommended Ready Player One to me, it was pretty clear that, you know, he and I grew up in the same era. We grew up liking the same everything. So honestly, it's a pretty fiercely nostalgic book for us Gen Xers, us as if you're born in the late 60s, early 70s. Like, how can you not appreciate that book with, like, especially all the Atari connections? And
80s was like a magic decade, man. Like, that had like Tarantino like talks shit on the 80s as far as movies. And I mean, there's a million like counters I could do for that, but he says 70s is where it was at, like movies, and I won't disagree with them. But 80s, just pop culture, everything. I mean, huge, right? That must have been a crazy time to be a teenager watching content. But it blew. Did you ever watch I Love the 80s on VH1?
No. I'm gonna interrupt. I'm gonna interrupt and share something, which is I kind of have, I don't know if it's an egalitarian opinion or whatever to call it, but I think we tend to frame things in decades. Every decade looks great 10, 20, 30 years after the fact because the shitty stuff sinks down and the good stuff rises up, right? So like when I was in high school in the 80s, guess what I loved? The 60s. I was all about Hendrix, the Beatles. I was like a 60s lover. I even fucking went to fucking thrift stores and got like 70s and 60s like paisley shirts and shit like that. Like, yeah. Like we just kind of like in the 80s, we were like, you know, some bands were okay, but I mean, there was a lot of shitty pop in the 80s. You know what I mean? Like, but now mostly we hear the good stuff. Sometimes I freak out. I'm like, why is this piece of shit in my head?
I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. Like, that's entirely true. We people tend to glorify the past. I mean, very much so. But I think I'm sure you'd have to agree, the 80s are kind of a standout as far as nostalgia.
Well, and I have an interesting thing to share about nostalgia, which is someone I just learned this in the last year. I read someone talked about, I'm a huge Beatles fan, and someone talked about the fact that the post-war generation, right? The reason the 60s are so fucking great is because everything had to be new, because you could not be nostalgic for the 30s and 40s when we nearly wiped out humanity. Right? Like the world wars. Actually, I guess we got to go back. World War I and II left human culture at a level where you couldn't look back nostalgically. You had to look forward. So the 60s were about looking forward. 70s was about advancing. 80s were so the 80s is when we started getting nostalgic. And I think maybe the reason why, and there's some good shit. I mean, I love shit from the 90s, but I'm like saying to myself, will the 2000s, will the 2010s have nostalgia later on? And the problem is they had nostalgia when they were new. Like in the 70s and 80s, we didn't have nostalgia for a lot because, you know, how can you have nostalgia for like millions of people dying and disease spreading and all kinds of shit? Like you could be little since, like, you know, whatever. I was nostalgic for some shit from the 60s, but I wonder if like our level of nostalgia is like I got a 16-year-old in this house, and God love her, but she loves 80s music. And I'm like, you're a fucking teenager. I'm supposed to be hearing new shit from you. I want to hear shit coming out of your room that I go, that's good. By the way, every once in a while she'll play something hip hop or something else I haven't heard, and I'm like, okay, that's good. What's that? Give me that.
Yeah, where was I for that one?
I'm gonna Shazam that because it's current. But you know, in a way, nostalgia robs the younger generations of having their own culture of their time, because the 70s, you know, because disco era, this era, that era, because it's all like crowding in on their lives, like with the level of nostalgia we have. I think I'm a little anti-nostalgia in my own way.
I totally get that, and I actually agree. But like, I will say, the teens, you know, 2011 through 19 were pretty great. And in like 2014 and 15, when I was living with this other group of guys with like Jay, who was on the show with me, I very often said, like, this is a golden age we're in right now with television and film, like especially television, like Game of Thrones, True Detective, Key and Peele, South Park, just everything.
Breaking Bad.
So good. Breaking Bad. Yeah, everything was incredible. And it was just like, I mean, television specifically, streaming were kind of starting to come up in a big way. But now, and then just like the 20s, COVID, boom, just killed the decade before it could even really like start, you know? It's put us all on such a bad footing.
It has. And now we will not discuss politics. I ban it, but
sure,
Lord knows the partisanship and division in every country on earth. It's not just ours, all over. Like, yeah, I mean, I guess I could be nostalgic for the time when you could say person on this side of the spectrum and person on that side of the spectrum can have differing opinions, and then they go to the voting booth and somebody wins, somebody loses, but we don't pretend the other side wants to destroy the world. And now, like, that's all we get from both sides is if they're in charge, they'll ruin everything. And it's like, I don't know, we got a couple hundred years here, a couple hundred years of this experiment of voting instead of fighting, fighting through the vote, so to speak, of what direction to go. It's like, it's just bull. I don't know. So yeah, it is. I think that is also hurting our current decade. The fact that, I mean, when one political party pretends that NFL football is no longer something they can enjoy because of a singer's boyfriend being in the Super Bowl, it's like, dude, we're taking this stuff too far. Like, how can you be nostalgic for this era?
Yeah, like I don't even know what you're referencing, but like that just sounds so much like somebody today would do. It's crazy. Hey, but real quick before I forget, that just the thing about the ages I wanted to point out is this is a pretty interesting and relevant thing. You know, I don't know if as an actor or filmmaker or anybody, your age is just on the internet. So like if you type me into Google and all my stuff comes up, like, you know, IMDb and my website and yada, 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 it just says my birth date right there and what age I am. And I mean, I was like, I can't be the only person in entertainment that doesn't want that maybe necessarily to pop up every time. You start getting into like your mid 30s, you start kind of like fudging your age year a little bit and start wanting to be like, well, like dial it back by 2 years every now and then. But now if everybody can just immediately type your stuff into Google and just, oh no, you're this age, boom. It's like, are women cool with that? Is this just for everybody that are, you know, actresses that for a long time, like put their age like 5 years younger? I mean, like, as you were saying with your wife, you're like, oh, whoops, you know, because that was like a big like foible for us. Like a lot of times was
It
like,
used to be. Yeah. I think, you know, what's funny is I'm see that because I consider you a friend, I'm doing a lot of sharing. Normally I try to share less on these podcasts and just let the other person share. But I've always kind of enjoyed saying I'm older than I am.
really?
Yeah, I guess I feel there's a little earnestness and gravitas to being older. It's like people ask me how old you are, and I'm like, I'll joke, I'll just go, I'm almost 60. Well, like I'll be 56 in a couple of months, but I'm happy to say I'm almost 60 because I don't know.
Maybe the 30s is like and probably like 40s is like a weird era for that. Because I mean, I didn't have the thing about age, or if anything, I would probably say I wanted to be older when I was younger. But then, yeah, I mean, just when you start getting into like early 30s to mid 30s become late 30s, it's just when it starts to occur to you at all. And then, you know, but now just literally like everybody, whoever, just type their name in. This is when they were born. It's like you can't escape it, or like, or even like deny it, or be like, guys, can we not say that? You know what I mean? Like you can't escape it, basically.
I hear you. Well, I'm going to note that you had said you had to go at a certain time, and we're creeping up on that. So two things. One is, man, I think we should do it again and talk more, because there's a subject that I cleared with you during our little break, which was I kind of was interested in talking because
let's not mention it now, just because I
won't mention it now, but there's a subject that's in a lot of your work we didn't get to talk about that I feel like has a lot of value. And by the way, another funny thing is when I was introducing you, I wanted to also say that when I type in your name in the podcast, when I go to discoverindiefilm.com and I type in Hayden in the search field, I also get up like a really great podcast that was because of you when I talked to your friend Stephen Smith, who experienced long COVID. And that was an amazing talk.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I told Steve I was going to say hi to you. Yeah, I was glad to be able to do that. That was
how is he? Is he doing better?
He is doing better. He's doing much better. He's like completely recovered, which is great. And obviously I love that for my friend, and I, you know, that's all I want. And I mean, of course, but it's just like at the time when I was talking to him, I really thought he was going to die. He told me he was like on the way out. You know, and I was like, and he's like, I just want to kind of get my story out there. If you know anybody that maybe has like, he even said maybe has like a podcast or something. I was like, I do know somebody that has a podcast, actually. And so I was just really happy that I was able to make that happen.
Yeah, he was. I remember.
And then, just a nightmare story about long COVID. But
I mean, literally not
better.
being able to get out of bed. Yeah, just amazing.
Like
I'm so glad to hear that he's doing better.
Yeah, he was on Boys Club. He was a producer on Boys Club.
Oh, nice. So he's back working too. That's great.
He's up and
hail the people at UCLA who said, right? UCLA medical saved his life.
Yep. Yeah, that whole story was just like a pretty ringing indictment of like the medical system, like in this city especially, but America overall, but LA, like healthcare and just like the mentally ill and the homeless and how that's dealt with is just like, ouch, like, wow. Don't try to go for mental health care or like really any health care unless you're rich. Like that's the moral of Steve's story.
Well, I wish I could say something wiser about cap. There's a lot in the world that could be better, but yeah, having healthcare tied to profit is kind of a toughie. All right, so I have two questions for you. I have two questions for you before we go. And I got 2 minutes, and I'm pretty sure you can hear me even though you froze for a second there, which is, first of all, because you're going to run, and then I'm going to hand this off to my podcast producer. Hey, Calvin Madsen, great guy. He, I have an email from you with combustible criteria that you sent me. Do you want that in the show notes?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
All right, we'll put the poem in the show notes. And anything you want to mention for people to look up and check out before we hop off? Because I promise you could go in 2 minutes.
Yeah, okay, guys, just if you know anybody in publishing, anybody who might be able to further the interests of a young novelist, for, like, somebody, a good work of novel, a good working novel, then please get in touch with me some way. Hayden Croft, my website's Hayden L. Croft, HaydenLCroft.com. Look me up on Google, just Hayden, my name, HaydenCroft. I'm on IMDb, Facebook, Instagram. You'll get in touch with me. But if anybody does have an uncle that works at Viking Press or Hachette Audio or Penguin, please do get in touch.
Excellent. I'm glad you got that out, and I'll that'll be in show notes, and a link to your website will be in show notes. And always a pleasure. But you know what? Maybe we just created it. We're not going to wait 3 years.
Yeah,
we got to do a part 2.
Sooner.
We got to, and the funny thing is, we had such a fun time chatting that we didn't even I felt like when you told me you listened to the previous podcast, I'm like, damn, that's an unfair advantage. He's going to be able to bring shit up. But then we were so busy talking, you didn't bring a lot.
Yeah, and I didn't go over them with notes or anything. I just listened to part of a few of the last ones. But yeah, we got to do this again. No, for sure. Let's talk about it.
Oh, you brought up in your email. You brought up the fact that I confessed to walking out of the film Heat.
Yeah.
But that was situational. It was more about what was going on in my life at the time.
Why don't we even save that for the next one? I feel like I gotta come in on.
No, we got to. It's 11:50. You got to be somewhere.
Yeah. I gotta roll out, but this was great, Jeff. Honestly, thank you so much. You're doing every filmmaker a service, all storytellers. This is really important,
for sure. And I will thank everyone for listening. Check out the show notes to learn about Sherman Oaks Film Festival, Film Invasion Los Angeles. This podcast is discoveryndiefilm.com. There will be links to it all. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And thank you, Hayden, for doing this again and for agreeing to do it even some more.
Of course, yeah. Oh, great time, Jeff.